It's just been one of those days, you know? Okay, wait for it to go live. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Software Design Simplified live stream. Today, I am very ill with a cold, and so I'm going to be kind of throaty and sound horrible, so I apologize for that in advance. We have the awesome Clarielle here. Say hello, Clarielle.
Hi.
Hi. And this is her code. We were refactoring it last week, and I've done quite a bit on it since we left it last week in my own time. And so I thought we could like briefly go through some of those ideas and what I did to it and how I made it better. And then we're going to try to add the Spotify API to it, which may or may not go swimmingly. I'm trying out a different tack for this live stream, and I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants a bit more. I've not really done any prep, literally. I love doing prep for things, but it turns out that sometimes that can make it a little bit staid, a little bit kind of, oh, well, he's already rehearsed all of this, so it seems very polished and very finessed. But actually, that's not software development, is it? And I want to help you all get better at doing it in the real world and not just in some theoretical vacuum. So, with all of that to say, this is, let me go back in time, because that is the wonderful thing about Git. So this commit here is where we left off last week. So we had an app that looked like this. Sorry, this was the app test. We had all of these tests for the app. For those of you who are not familiar with the app is a music manager. So let me just very quickly run through what it does. You go bin run, and that starts at, pardon me, and you get all of these different options. The option we've been focusing on is add a music album, and then listing all the music albums. So we're going to list out all the music albums because I want to start from a clean sheet of paper, and we're not doing that here. So I'm just going to clear down what I know the database is. It's not really a database, it's held in files. So it's in data, and then we've got all of these JSON files here. I'm going to get rid of that. And then get rid of that. Okay, let's run it again. List all music, list all albums, and it says no music album in the library. We're going to add an album. What's the album name? Beck. Is it on Spotify? Yes. And we put in a data publication, 2023-01-01, just for example. It's not archived. What's the genre? Rock. And it takes us back to the main menu. And then we can list out all music albums. And there's our album name. And it's got an ID. And it's published on the date that we entered. That is the app. And last time we'd written some tests for this. So we had some app tests. Just hide the Zoom bar. Give me a second. App test. And so this app test was, as you can see, quite hairy, quite difficult to understand. This was testing the menu. This was testing that when I add a music album, the album will show. And then this one was when I add a music album in the genre of rock, then I see rock when I list all genres. Now, as you can see, the tests are massive. There's all of these very strange string IOs going on everywhere. There's all sorts of stuff going on here. If I came to these tests and I needed to change them, it would be a nightmare. Absolute nightmare to figure out what's going on. So, pardon me. So what we're going to do, what I first did was I sat down and I thought I really want to clean up some of these tests. So these are the tests for music album that we had as well. These were kind of derived out of desperation because right towards the end of the stream, it was not going well, if you remember. And we were spinning our wheels. And so I wrote these to try and figure out, like delve into the system, figure out what was going on. But really, these are the high level tests, and there's only 3 of them, which is not ideal code coverage. And I just want to check out what I did. I did quite a bit of work on this. I got a little bit obsessed in my own time. I have videos of all of this stuff if you would like to see them. Yeah, so I worked on it for probably about 3 hours, refactoring these tests, and I'm going to show you what the tests look like now. This is now what they look like. When I start up the app, it shows me a menu. We've got a line for the actual execution. Then we've got 2 lines for the expectation. The way I like to think of tests is there are 3 sections of any good test. It's a range, there's an act, and there's an assert. This is also known as given, when, then. As in, given I have some stores set up, when I add a music album, then I should see these expected questions. So there are 3 sections to any good test. And ideally, you want to keep them very short, very readable, and very clean. Some people say it's more important to keep the tests clean than it is the production code, because it's the tests that you want to be able to change even more flexibly than the production code. I'm not totally sold on that idea, but I'm willing to give it certainly some room at the table of my brain. So there's the range, act, and assert. And my rule is you give each one a blank line. There should be 2 blank lines in every test. And ideally, you want the act on a single line, if you can. And if not a single line with some kind of nice indentation in so you can see what's going on. Here's the next test. I think I did add one test. When I add a music album, then the same album will show when I list all music albums. You may remember that this test used to be like about 16 lines of code. And now it is 3 lines of arrange, 1 line of act, and 2 lines of assert. I think we could get a little cleaner than this, but not much. And then this last one, arrange, act, assert. What questions do you have about this, Clariel? I know you had 1 or 2 questions about the tests and the framework I'd used.
Yeah, I've never used Minitest before. How about like just having a question about the string IO down there below.
Oh yeah,
you have
yeah.
it duplicated here and then below it. So is it possible to extract them like for each test you can?
Great question. I love it. It is possible, but it's more hassle than it's worth. I'll tell you why. Before I answer that question, it is a great question. I'll explain why Minitest and what the difference between Minitest and RSpec is. I won't spend very long on the answer to this question because this is a technology specific question and we're in a live stream that's all to do with design. So I don't want to get too bogged down in getting obsessed with Ruby as a language. So you may have seen for any of you who've never seen Ruby before, this is what it looks like. And there's two main test frameworks in Ruby. One is called Minitest, and it comes with the language built in. And the other is called RSpec, and that's a gem or a library that you have to install. And there's different styles and there's, there's different features that each one has. Generally speaking, Minitest is a very, very simple, very low number of features, very simple language, very concise. Sorry, not language, little test framework. And RSpec has a lot more features. It's got mocking built into it. I mean, Minitest debatably does have mocking as well, but it's just very, very basic. RSpec has the kitchen sink of features in it. It has everything you could possibly want in a framework and loads of things you probably don't want. And RSpec is a lot more commonplace in the Ruby world. The reason I like Minitest is because A, it runs very slightly faster than RSpec. B, it's much simpler, so there's less API to get your head around. There's just less stuff to learn. There's assert equal, there's assert match, there's a few other things. Whereas in RSpec, you can do all of these kind of custom matches, and you can do expect menu to be printed, things like that. And then it looks, using meta programming magic, it looks for a printed question mark method on your menu, and if it's there, it doesn't. It's too much magic for me, to be honest. I'd rather something fairly simple that I can just reason about. And the third thing is that RSpec introduces all sorts of tools, and this is where it does get into design a little bit. It introduces all sorts of tools that introduce unnecessary coupling into your tests. So in RSpec, you can do this thing called a let. And you might actually be able to do the same thing in Minitest now, but it's a truly horrible idea. When you first look at it, it looks really clean and simple and nice. So to your question, Clariel, we could actually do this in a let. So a let would look like this. You have a symbol here, and you have the keyword let, and then you, in a block here, this is what a block or a lambda or a closure looks like in Ruby. It's the same thing, really. You do string.io new, and then we'll do the same for genres store. And we can now delete that, and we can also delete that because this let will set up a variable called music album store with string.io on every new test that is created. Let's just see if that runs bin test. I'm expecting it will like it. Oh, it does like it. It's totally happy with that. Yeah, you can do lets in Minitest now. Oh dear, how the mighty have fallen. So if I copy and paste that and do genres, so this is a good thing to do because it answers your question of could we not extract those things. As you correctly pointed out, there's loads of duplication here. Let's not worry about these helper methods for now. And we're going to run bin test, and it works again. One small little thing that I did do was I created this script here that will run the tests, and whenever you've made a change, it will run the tests again, just automatically. You can just skip back to the window, make a change, and instantly see if what you've done breaks the app. We always want to have things in a runnable state. Anyway, so you can do these lets, you can do them in Minitest, it turns out, but they're not a very good idea. On the surface, you've cleaned things up, right? On the surface, you're like, oh, I've removed all the duplication. Yay me, this is awesome. And it's okay for a simple test like this, actually. It's not that big a problem. But once you get into nested tests, because in RSpec you can do contexts, and like when the app has 3 users, and you do a do here, and then you have another context down here, context, when the app has 5 users, or when the database is down, or any number of things. These 2 variables up here persist throughout all of the tests. And even worse, they persist throughout all of these nested context blocks. So you start to get this kind of nested structure where you'll be deep down in the bowels of some test and you'll want to change something. And you're like, where's that variable coming from? You look all around here. And you're like, oh, I don't find it there. And you'll go up a level into the nested context above it and you won't find it there. And then you'll find it right at the very top of the file. And you're like, okay, great. So now I need to change music album store to be something a bit different. How am I going to do that? So you maybe want to do something like some initialization value. You maybe want to initialize it with some value up here. But then, of course, that is going to be coupled to every single one of your tests. And guess what? If you've got 200 tests here, you've now broken every single one of your tests with like what, 5 characters of code. That is coupling. We don't want that kind of coupling. Change one small thing. I just want to do this one small thing. Stop if this sounds familiar. I just want to do this one small thing, make this one tiny change. Now everything breaks. Help. All my apps broken. All my tests are broken. Now I have to go in and be like, okay, which one of these described blocks do I need to override this for? And then you end up with like this situation where you've got one down here and one down here, and then one here, but not one here. And then this one is different, and this one is different again. Well, this one is missing, and then this one is different again. And then you have nested ones within nested ones, and it just gets out of control. Again, for this kind of simplicity, when you've only got this level of tests, it doesn't look obviously bad. But I gave up on Let's many, many years ago. I really like a talk called Let's Not. Let's Not RSpec. Yeah, RSpec or Let's Not. Avoid using before and let. Avoid using let. Well, he's actually advocating for it, but yeah, the bad parts. So there's quite a bit of documentation out there on this kind of stuff. Does that make sense, Ariel, as to why I'm not doing lets?
Yeah. Yes.
I generally, nowadays, after having been in this gig for about 15 years, I tend to prefer a little bit of duplication and really stupid simple code over a bit more magic. You know, like this is a little bit of noise, but I'm prepared to put up with this little bit of noise so that I can just read it. And this is self-enclosed. This is really super important to me. I want everything in this test to be in this test. Now, obviously, there's a helper method here. I do apologize. There's a helper method here, and that is down here somewhere. But I want everything, where possible, to live in this test. I don't want to be having to zoom up and down. But, you know, this would be like 12 lines of code. So to extract that into a method is worth it for me, because it's 12 lines of code I've got to read, I've got to parse, I've got to understand. And I'm a simple man with a very simple brain. I'm not very intelligent. So I need it to be made dead stupid and dead simple for me personally. So that's why I extract these, but I don't extract these because they're just single liners. It is a bit weird having string IO there. I would read this and say, what the heck is string IO? You could say create new store or something like that. Yeah, that might be quite nice. Any questions from anybody else before I move on? I find duplication, to remove it or not remove it, I find to be one of the most difficult choices in software. And there's loads and loads of people out there that will claim, oh, it's dead easy. I just remove every single bit of duplication whenever I see it. I always think good luck making stable, reliable software with that approach, because it doesn't work. I've tried it myself. You end up with this very, very brittle, fragile code with these very strange abstractions. If you get the abstractions right, it's all brilliant. But I'm with Sandy Metz, where she says prefer a little bit of duplication over the wrong abstraction, because if you remove duplication too early, you just pick the wrong abstraction, you pick the wrong shapes for your code, and that ends up really being a huge problem down the line. So nowadays I've got a bit of a spidey sense about what duplication I remove and what I just leave well alone. Okay, any more questions about this before we get into trying to add Spotify? We've got half an hour left.
No.
Okay, cool. So let's do this. What we would like is to add a Spotify API call so that when it basically when you add the music album, it will ask you the name of the album, and then it will query the Spotify API in the very minimal sense, in the very, like the first sketch of this feature. It should come back with the very first result that it finds, and it will pre-populate is on Spotify as being true, and it will get the publish at date, and it will get the name, and then it will add it into our database of stuff. So we're going to find the code that says add music method, and we're just going to have a bit of a look at it and see how it works. So we've got each of these lines that are asking for information. What immediately strikes me is that we've got all of these things reading, and they're all reading from the user. And the change we want to make really is, if you think about it, if we swap all of this stuff here out for an API call to Spotify, instead of getting the answers from the terminal, we'll be golden. Right? So in app test, how can we change this test to simulate it going to Spotify or coming back? Let's just have a think about this. It's basically testing the questions that it's going to be expecting. Okay. It asks me questions about the album. And then there's a separate test down here for when I add a music album, then that same album will show when I list all music albums. So add music album, what's in here? This is adding the music album by selecting the menu option 8. That's what the 8 is there for. And then the name is the name of the album. Then there's a Y, and there's a published date, and there's another Y, and then there's a genre. So the change we want to make really is, I want to add a music album, but I only want to specify the name. Okay. And I'm going to add a music album here that also only has the name. And we're just going to see if that actually comes back with an album name. So here we're going to change this test. So we're going to break the code, and then we'll figure out how to refactor it on red to be the thing that we want. So we're going to press 8, and we expect that when we give it a name and hit return, it will go to the API and it will add a new album for us. So I think if we changed it to that, we only give it a name, we're not going to give it any of this other stuff because it shouldn't need it because it's going to the API. Okay, let's rerun the tests. Now, of course, all the tests fail, as you would expect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the part of the app that needs to change, which is this bit. And we're going to do something most developers don't do, which is instead of trying to hack in the Spotify API here, we're going to make what I would call a seam. And a seam is a split in the code between where we are now and where we want to be. So what is the difference in behavior? The difference in behavior, is, as we've already said, is you want to ask from a user or ask from an automated robot, i.e. the API. So this is going to be our user strategy, user fetching strategy. So what if we did something like fetch album data from user? Let's just see what this looks like. So we're going to fetch the album data from the user, and we're going to return a hash with all of this data in. We want one thing to return. So it'll be name, genre, publish date, archived, and genre. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ruby, this is a bit like the JavaScript thing that you can do like that. It's basically name is the name variable, genre is the genre variable. It's just a shorter way of doing it. And then we're going to, let's think, what are we going to do here?
You have genre twice.
Have genre twice. Where?
178.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Good point. Good spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've missed out on Spotify. Good spot. Thank you, Clariel. And I've also not put it in order, which is my biggest pet peeve. Name on Spotify, publish date, archived, and then genre. Okay, awesome. So now we're going to rerun the tests, and they're still going to fail, which is fine. And then we're going to wrap all of this stuff up in this fetch album from data from album data from user. So I'm just going to say album data equals fetch album data from user. I'm going to delete that. Now it's going to still fail, but we're going to say album data. We're just going to do the mapping here, basically. Album data fetch on Spotify. I have actually changed my mind, and I'm going to revert the changes that I made to this test, because I'm not comfortable with it keep failing like this. That does not make me a happy bunny. I'm fine with it failing on rep for a little bit. So we're going to go, but not this long. We're going to check out the original test suite. Undefined method, local variable method publish date for app. So I've made some mistake here. Well, I mean, I haven't even filled it out, have I? So that'll be why. Album data fetch publish date. Archived is going to be album data. Fetch, very, very boring. Archived. Album data, not fetch, name. And I want to get this passing as soon as I can. Which means I should not be fiddling around with formatting. Undefined local variable or method genre. Oh, right. Okay. Genre is here. So that needs album data fetch genre 2. Okay, undefined local or variable method genre. It's still telling me that. Album data fetch genre. That's weird. Oh, unless genre is empty. Silly boy. We're back to green. Now I know that this stuff here, we're going to go to the Spotify API for this. So I was going to say, I know that we need to wrap that in a class. I don't know that we need to wrap that in a class at all. That's a lie. But I am going to wrap it in a class, and you'll see why in a second. So we're going to do class fetch. So we're going to just name the class the method of fetching. So this is going to be fetch album data from user. And we'll just have a call method here, which is Ruby's canonical way of calling. If you've just got an object, and it's only got one action, and it's not got any data at all, and it's just got purely behavior, this is the pattern that I like to use. Now, if I swap this out for fetch album data.new.call, this will not work. And it won't work because we don't have this ask for album name. We've broken the dependencies by moving it from a method in here to this object here. We've now got all of this shared state in ask for album name. Whereas ask for album name, it's a music album helper. So let's just do what the test wants us to do and include this module in here. And this should give us those methods. And I think we'll run into other problems, but we'll come to those when we come to them. Private method called for nil class. So that's an album helper 25. At output is nil, as I thought it might be. So now what you're seeing is I'm trying to pull this code apart, and it is resisting my efforts already. It's saying, no, I depend on this internal state over here. No, I don't want to do that. Let me just have my at output variable. Where does at output come from? It's initialized up here. So if I was to extract into a class, which I've just done, this is coupling. This is exactly what the bad kind of coupling is all about. I should just be able to move these methods into a different object, and it should all just work. And instead, it depends on this internal bit of state. What questions do people have about that? Is that clear? What do you think I mean by internal state?
But I thought that we use that output and input, you said injection, dependency injection, to just solve the problem of coupling. But no, having no.
It's a good point. Just let me cough for a moment. Oh dear. One thing I've learned tonight is don't try and do a live stream when you're bunged up with a cold. You raise an interesting point. We've injected that output, and it was to get away from coupling. You are 100% correct with that. Because for those of you who weren't here, this output didn't used to be here. It just used to be a straightforward puts here. But that meant that all the behavior was coupled to using standard out. So we couldn't test any of that puts. So the object was essentially untestable. Instead, we injected this output in and made it more testable, and hence less coupled. So you're absolutely right, Clarielle. We made it less coupled, and now we need to make it less coupled again. Coupling is spectrum. There are 9 different forms of connascence or coupling. Connascence, I always struggle to spell it. .io? No. Connaissance. And there is a website. These are the ones anyway. Connaissance of name, of type, of meaning, of position, of algorithm, of execution, of timing of values, and identity. And each one of these has a different level of coupling. So coupling of name, it just means you need the two things need to agree on the same method name. Well, I mean, you cannot have a system without somebody agreeing on somebody's name somewhere. So that kind of thing is very weak. And then connaissance of timing, for example, when you have two things that both need to be timed at exactly the same time, or connaissance of execution order. This is one I see an awful lot. You can call A then B, but you can't call B then A, because then everything will blow up, because A has to do something that sets it up for B. And then you've got two elements that depend on the order of A and B. Now you are in a world of hurt. So this is a much stronger form of coupling. So what we have here in our case is it's not coupling of name, it's stronger than that. It's coupling of type. So this is actually currently coupled by type, because this needs to be something that responds to puts. But now that we want to wrap it up in a class here, the problem is this module. This module is assuming it's got the at output. So this is coupling it by, not algorithm, probably values, because it needs the value of output to be able to work. And this is exactly why I don't like modules or mixins. So what I prefer to do is inject the dependency again into here. So we're going to go initialize output, and we're going to go output equals output, which seems a bit tautological. Pardon me. Well, I'm also going to jump ahead a little bit, and I know that we're going to need an input and an output here. Input equals input. We are fast running out of time. Missing keywords input and output. Okay, so it knows I'm creating one of these things. So now we can pass in the dependencies from this object. Output is at output, and input is at input. Back to green. So we've broken that dependency now, which is awesome. Doesn't look like we've done much. We've just put it in a class. What the heck is the big deal? You might be thinking. This is just the same code. You just shuffle bits around. But no, we've created ourselves a scene. And the scene we've created is we can now put any other object that responds to call in here. And so long as it comes back with this, it'll all just work, and we can swap out the behavior. So let me show you how that works. This is I'm going to assign this to a fetcher. Okay, so we're going to initialize this fetcher right at the very top of the file. You'll see why I do that in a second. That fetcher. What's that? Now this is even better. Let's see if it passes. This is why I have the test running automatically. Make sure I've not made any silly mistakes. So this is saying just what, like, fetch whatever from this fetcher. Now there is I was going to say there is one problem. There actually isn't. I'm making things up now. What we can do is we can now say Spotify fetcher equals fetch album data from Spotify. New input output. uninitialized constant. So it's an uninitialized class. So we're going to go here and we're going to make that class. It's now going to say, oh, you haven't given me the right number of arguments here. And now it's happy because we're not calling call. The moment I switch this fetcher out and we start actually adding something into the call is where things are going to get interesting. So let's write this call. And what we know is the input is input and output. And the thing we want this call to return is all of these things. So on Spotify, it's going to always be hard coded to yes, right? Because it's on Spotify. Otherwise, we wouldn't be fetching it from Spotify. The publish date, we're going to get that. In fact, we're not going to need to do that if we've got variables up here. So we're still going to have to ask for the album name because the API needs something to go off, right? And then we're going to basically, if we were to mock out the code, I would say something like Spotify search name is name and dot results dot first result. And you could do name is result dot name, result dot publish date, result dot archived, and result dot genre. And this is programming by intent. This is the kind of thing we wish we had. So even if we finish the live stream there, we have a kind of a skeleton for the next one. We've got 10 minutes left. Oh, hey, Hemel. I am inverting dependencies to some degree. Yeah, you're right. So I used to work with Hemel. It's nice to see you again, sir. So we're going to, there was a gem for Spotify, and we're going to download it. Ruby Spotify gem. The Ruby-friendly opinionated Spotify API. I like that idea. What's the API like? So we need to define this, or alternatively, it can be supplied in environment variables. Okay, I'm not going to commit this stuff, but we're just going to chuck my details in here, and I'm going to recycle. I'll delete the app and everything at the end of the live stream, so don't bother trying to hack into my Spotify account. So we'll have accounts here. Now, how do we search? Recommended for exploration or local development. You need to redirect them to Spotify accounts. Don't think we're going to have enough time to do this because we need to do all this creating a session nonsense. That's annoying. Let's see if we can search follow an artist. Okay. It doesn't have anything about searching. Let's try another one. Okay, you can search playlists and you can search albums. That looks a bit more promising. Okay, so how do we authenticate? That's always the tricky bit. Oh, seriously? Just your ID and your secret? Oh, that's not like it. Okay, so it would be our Spotify album search name. Okay, And then what data comes back? Will it tell me that? am.album type doesn't give the attributes here. That's a bit annoying. Okay. Let's just try and get this working. And we will just, this is the technique I always use, is to throw a result here. So it doesn't like our Spotify. It doesn't know what it is. So we will do bundle add. Oh, do you have bundler? You don't have bundler in this project, do you? Oh gosh. I'm definitely not going to get this finished. Bundle add Spotify. Okay. Let's see what happens. Still doesn't like it. So we're going to, at the very beginning of our app, say require bundler setup. Maybe we need to do require our Spotify. Okay, that's a step forward. Unidentified code for 400 bad requests. Okay, so I reckon that's probably coming from the authentication line, I would guess. I can't see where it's coming from. It won't allow me to scroll down. That's a bit weird. This is all just within the Minitest framework, which is really odd. So I'm going to authenticate, and we'll hope that gets us out of that sticky situation. Your client ID and your client secret. So Spotify web client. It's actually Spotify developer dashboard. And we're going to, I already have an app, Handley, so I've cheated. Client ID is that. Client secret is that. I know. Don't worry, I won't commit it. I won't do anything untoward with it. I'll just delete it after this stream is over. Okay. So it passes. We're not actually calling it yet, but at least it's not blowing up when we do authenticate. So that's progress, isn't it? Says he confidently. So the cool thing here is all I need to do is do that. And technically, I didn't even need to comment out that line. And now it's using Spotify. Right? So undefined local variable method asks for name. That is because it doesn't have this include album helper. Interesting, no? We get a throw with all the attributes, wowzers, of the album. Now, this is a list of albums, I'm guessing. So let's throw the first one. This is the first one, Spotify album. Okay, I'm a bit lost. Undefined first for Spotify album. Okay, we'll just list out what methods we can call. It's a bit opaque. Tracks complete, method missing, embed, and hash for. That's a strange set of. It's a very strange set of methods. Okay. Super confused. I just want to know the name of it. Album type, single, available markets. Let's look at these instance variables. Genres. And then we've got this like height. Oh, they're the images. Okay, cool. Artists. Madonna. So what did we actually search for here? We hard-coded something in the test. Pop and blues. So I'm just going to guess that the name is on name. See if that gives us anything. There you go. It certainly does. Why it wasn't coming up in the list of methods, goodness only knows. Okay, so the result is the first one. And now we'll say which one of these does it respond to? Which one does it not like? Undefined method publish date. Okay, is there anything that looks like a publish date here? Got 2 minutes left.
Is the release date there?
Was a release date. Nice. You found it the same as I did. Undefined method archived. That'll do me. So we're just going to hard code archived as no for now. And then can we do genre? It doesn't like genre, but I saw genres plural. There's genres, but it's nil, which is annoying. Genres. Doesn't seem to have genre data, which is wild. What about result.artist? There's no method artist. What about genres plural? I'm guessing that will just come back with nil. Okay. So the test failed in the correct ways. It doesn't like genre for some reason. So I'm just going to hard code that as rock because we don't really have time to figure out why that's doing that. Ooh, it doesn't like that. I've done something very silly there. Yeah. I can't program in Ruby, apparently. Okay. So now the test needs slight tweaking because, of course, it's hard-coded as rock and it's blues. So I'm just going to skip over that test. We don't want to change it. I just want to say don't run it for now. This one expected all of these questions, and then we only got this printed out, which makes sense, doesn't it? Because it's not going to ask all these others because it goes to the Spotify API. So that is what we wanted. And because I've done it in an array here, I can just do that. And that passes. And then finally, we expected this to match a different name, basically. So the name is actually popular music from the HBO series. And that fails because I think it's a regular expression problem, I would suspect. No. Name popular music from the original HBO series. Ah, it's the date. It's the date that's messing us up. Because the date is this one. It's published on. This is why I hate these assertions. You can't figure out actually what the difference is between them. Maybe it is now the Escaping. Yeah, it's the escaping. That's it. We're done. Now, we are making real calls to the real API, which is not a good idea. So we could add VCR, record those, play them back, etc., etc. But hopefully you get the point. In 20 minutes, because I've isolated the dependencies inside a class, and we've got the right dependencies and we've got the right seam here, we can create a new class that fulfills the same contract, swap out the internals, and we get a change in behavior. What questions do people have? I know we're 3 minutes over.
What kind of tests are you writing here? Would you say they are contract tests, integration tests?
They're unit tests, Hemel. And I know you won't like that answer. Everybody has different definitions about what a unit is. If you read Kent Beck's original book, he calls them not unit tests, but developer tests. And after many, many years of writing extremely fine-grained tests, where each test tests one tiny little class, and then you wire it all together and it doesn't work, that's slight oversimplification. After many years of doing that, I have come to think that a unit should be a unit of behavior, not a unit of a class or a method or a function call or any of those things. Now, I'm aware of JB Rainsberger's integration tests are a scam talk, and I get it. But I still think that if you write high-level tests for one kind of behavior, that gives you the flexibility of refactoring underneath that. And so long as you've got a decent amount of coverage, I'm totally happy with that. And I'm really happy with the trade-offs that brings me. You can see how much I had to change these tests to get it working. Like, I didn't really have to change very much at all because I'm testing at such a high level. And so then when I restructure all my code underneath this app, whatever restructurings I do here, it doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't keep breaking my tests. Well, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. If there's any more questions, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.